Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens. Stanza 1. Complacencies of the peignoir and late coffee and oranges in a sunny chair, and the green freedom of a cockatoo upon a rug mingle to dissipate the holy hush of ancient sacrifice. She dreams a little, and she feels the dark encroachment of that old catastrophe, as a calm darkens among water lights. The pungent oranges and bright green wings seem things in some procession of the dead, winding across wide water without sound. The day is like wide water without sound, stilled for the passing of her dreaming feet over the seas to silent Palestine, dominion of the blood and sepulchre. Stanza 2. Why should she give her bounty to the dead? What is divinity if it can come only in silent shadows and dreams? Shall she not find in comforts of the sun, in pungent fruit and bright green wigs, or else in any balm or beauty of the earth, things to be cherished like the thought of heaven? Divinity must live within herself. Passions of rain, or moods in falling snow, grievings in loneliness, or unsubdued elations when the forest blooms, gusty emotions on wet roads on autumn nights, all pleasures and all pains, remembering the bough of summer and the winter branch. These are the measures destined for her soul. Stanza 3. Jove in the clouds had his inhuman birth. No mother suckled him, no sweet land gave large-mannered motions to his mythy mind. He moved among us a muttering king, magnificent, would move among his hinds, until our blood, commingling virginal with heaven, brought such requital to desire. The very hinds discerned it in a star. Shall our blood fail, or shall it come to be the blood of paradise? And shall the earth seem all of paradise that we shall know? The sky will be much friendlier then than now, a part of labor and a part of pain, and next in glory to enduring love, not this dividing and indifferent blue. Stanza 4. She says, I am content when wakened birds before they fly test the reality of misty fields by their sweet questionings. But when the birds are gone and their warm fields return no more, where, then, is paradise? There is not any haunt of prophecy, nor any old chimera of the grave, neither the golden underground, nor isle melodious, where spirits gat them home, nor visionary south, nor cloudy palm, remote on heaven's hill, that has endured, as April's green endures or will endure, like her remembrance of awakened birds, or her desire for June and evening, tipped by the consummation of the swallow's wings. Stanza 5. She says, but in contentment I still feel the need of some imperishable bliss. Death is the mother of beauty. Hence from her alone shall come fulfillment to our dreams and our desires, although she strews the leaves of sure obliteration on our paths. The path sick sorrow took, the many paths where triumph rang its brassy phrase, or love whispered a little out of tenderness. She makes the willow shiver in the sun, for maidens who were wont to sit and gaze upon the grass, relinquished to their feet. She causes boys to pile new plums and pears on disregarded plate. The maidens taste and stray impassioned in the littering leaves. Stanza 6. Is there no change of death in paradise? Does ripe fruit never fall? Or do the boughs hang always heavy in that perfect sky, unchanging, yet so like our perishing earth, with rivers like our own that seek for seas they never find, the same receding shores that never touch with inarticulate pang? Why set the pear upon those river banks, or spice the shores with odors of the plum? Alas, that they should wear our colors there, the silken weavings of our afternoons, and pick the strings of our inspired lutes. Death is the mother of beauty, mystical, within whose burning bosom we devise our earthly mothers waiting, sleeplessly. Supple and turbulent, a ring of men shall chant in orgy on a summer morn their boisterous devotion to the sun, not as a god, but as a god might be, naked among them, like a savage source. Their chant shall be a chant of paradise, out of their blood returning to the sky, and in their chant shall enter, voice by voice, the windy lake wherein their Lord delights. The trees, like seraphim and echoing hills, that choir among themselves long afterward. They shall know well the heavenly fellowship of men that perish and of summer morn. And whence they came and whither they shall go, the dew upon their feet shall manifest. She hears upon that water without sound a voice that cries, "The tomb in Palestine is not the porch of spirits lingering. It is the grave of Jesus where he lay." We live in an old chaos of the sun, or old dependency of day and night, or island solitude unsponsored, free of that wide water, inescapable. Deer walk upon our mountains, and the quail whistle about us their spontaneous cries. Sweet berries ripen in the wilderness, and in the isolation of the sky, at evening, casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness on extended wings. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It is Monday, the 15th of September, and it is 9:47 p.m. my time. Tonight I have a number of things on my mind, and I think I'm just going to talk about them. I don't have a title for this. Perhaps. I was thinking of calling it Tomorrow. Yeah, maybe I'll call this podcast Tomorrow. And there's so many things I want to talk about that touch upon many of the themes I've spoken about in the last month. The generational rift. You know, throughout all of history, to the best of my knowledge, and it is entirely possible that I'm being sentimental. I don't know for sure. But test this in your heart and you tell me how you feel. Throughout all of history, the advancement of our children into the future was a preeminent goal of the human race. In fact, it's one of the few virtues we carried forward from nature, is the defense of our young. And this is a fantastic thing to observe and behold. In the time I've been on this mountain, and beginning some years ago with 3 cats, taken from my mother-in-law, whose own cat had a litter, I began on an adventure with cats that was to last me, now it's about 7 years. Started in about 2018. And in those 7 years, I dare say, I have probably seen 20 litters of cats born. Now, my cats are a bit smaller than North American cats. They're leaner. They're not skinny, but they're leaner. And my cats live as a colony. I am what some people might call a cat lady. Although I do take offense to that term because generally the cat lady lives inside a house with her cats. There is no cat in my bodega office at the moment. They sometimes come in through the windows. My cats are very autonomous. Sometimes a male will leave for 6 months and Rosemary and I just assume it has perished somehow. And lo and behold, after those 6 lunar cycles, the little bastard returns. Hair clean and smooth and shiny, teeth intact, eyes lucid, completely as he was when he left. And I sit back and I marvel to myself and I say, how did you do that? Because I'm quite certain none of my neighbors would be passing them food, although I could be wrong. But they would not be going to a store and buying pet food. They just do not have the money. Most of the dogs on the mountain on which I live exist on scraps. Basically the garbage. When you live the peasant life, and I live the peasant life, most of your organic garbage goes to animals. We don't have bones left over after we eat. The pit bulls will gobble up all of the chicken bones and the remaining flavor and fat on them. The cats will eat any speck of rice left in a cooking pot. You just put it down on the ground and you leave it there for an hour or two. You come back and it's been spotlessly cleaned. And then, of course, we have to disinfect it with soap and clean it properly. I never had this in my life in North America. I never had a pet as an adult being from 16 onwards. I never had the time or space for animals in my life. And it's a welcome addition to my life, and I have finally come to understand why human beings place such incredible weight upon, measure upon, animal relationships. Because animals make our lives better. They give us some form of love when nothing else does, especially cats and dogs. I'm not saying you could get this out of a chicken. I have a bond with these animals that is supernatural. And I could say things now that would perhaps render me foolish in the eyes of some of my listeners. I could say, for example, that I'm absolutely convinced that both my cats and my dogs can at times communicate directly to me with an intelligence heretofore ungiven to them by the human race. An intelligence in them unimagined by the human race. An intelligence within them unspoken in civil and non-superstitious societies. And yet I've seen it myself. I've seen things happen up here that you can't imagine. I remember when I had my first 2 pit bulls. My first pit bull was Luna. She's dead now. I got her about 8 years ago. I think in 2016, 9 years ago in 2016. And then after her, I got a male pit bull named Saul 1. I have Saul 2 now. And Saul 1 passed by cancer. Luna we had to give away to my mechanic, my auto mechanic. He used her as a guard dog because I had to separate the 2 pit bulls because they were just too dangerous together. And now I have 1 pit bull and another dog that is a saguata, which means mutt in Spanish. And she's about 80% pit bull. But she just doesn't have the killer instinct that Saul has. She doesn't readily attack other dogs. But I remember one time when I had Luna and Saul number 1. And Saul number 1 was allowed in the house and Luna was not. And the puppy went into the house and the adult pit bull called through a bark, called the puppy. And the puppy turned to look, and Luna, with her left paw, put her paw into the empty metal food bowl and dragged it in front of her, as if to say to the puppy Saul, "While you're in there, get us some food." My son and I witnessed this, and we looked at each other, and we could not believe what we had seen. That's one story. When Saul number 1 passed, he reappeared on the mountain, I suspect in astral form 3 days later, and was witnessed by 4 different people. I call him the Jesus dog, and I'm not trying to be blasphemous, but this really happened. Okay? Things happen in a natural place outside of the spotlight and scrutiny of the black box police. Magical things happen, miraculous things happen. There are constant encounters with other life forms. We had one last night. The whole town or the whole pueblo was talking about it. Again, I hesitate to tell you, dear listener, because you may think me mad. We have a creature in the mountains we call the Mona. And a Mona is about 3 feet tall, a cross between a human and a monkey. And there are different interpretations of what it might be. Some people in the Costa Rican community, the Tico community, believe that it is a native that is capable of shape-shifting. Others believe that it's a manifestation of magic, and a specific form of magic that they call love magic. And the rumor up here is that the Mona is appearing because there's a woman in love with me who wants to steal me away from Rosemary. I would not say love, but maybe wants a better life because I have a bit more money. I don't know what to make about this. I can tell you that I have heard the footsteps on the roof. It's not a cat. It's not a monkey. It's not anything like that. They're very deliberate and non-animal. One time, about 2.5 years ago, I believe, we had the most dramatic encounter. And we heard the footsteps on the roof, and then they stopped, and we heard a kind of thump on the ground, and then I heard urination, and it was a strong stream of urine, and I thought, that's a horse. Now, my wife and I were both up in bed in the dark listening to this with no lights on the property. For those of you who have ever lived in a rural area, you know that when the lights go out, it's pitch black except for the stars and the moon. Pitch black. It's a black that people don't understand anymore, people who live in cities. It's a pitch black. And my wife said to me, there is your proof the Mona exists, because I was making fun of these people. I said, well, I'm not convinced. That could have been a possum walking on the roof or one of the cats. She said, no, you heard the footsteps. And in truth, I did hear the footsteps. They did not sound like something that small. But anything bigger, I don't know how much weight a tin roof can take. It's steel framed and everything, but nonetheless. But it was the urination that I could not deny. And my wife said, how do you explain that? And I said, well, there's a horse on our property. I mean, animals wander around up here. And Rosemary said, I closed all the fences to get onto the property. There's no way a horse could be on the property. I said, well, one of them got in before you closed the fence. And it's trapped on our property now, and I'll release it in the morning. And I woke up and all of the fences and gates were closed with the normal barbed wire post gates. There was no horse on the property. I have absolutely no explanation for what happened. Those are the Mona. Now, the Mona don't bother me. Nothing bothers me. I mean, nothing bothers me. Not the angels of hell don't bother me, what some people call demons, but I would prefer to call them the angels of hell, where hell is a zone of remediation created by the higher authority to rehabilitate delinquent beings. Nothing bothers me. Returning to the cats, as I have said, I have seen some 20 litters of cats born up here, at least 20, and it's always magnificent to see. The kittens are always so cute. We've got 3 different litters now within the last 4 months. So we've got one litter that's under a month, and they're about this big, the kittens. They're absolutely gorgeous. We got another, and the litters are always small. So I don't want you to think there's hundreds of cats up here, because it's not uncommon for a North American cat, a big house cat in North America that goes, not a house cat per se, but sleeps indoors and goes out sometimes. It's not uncommon for a cat to have 8 kittens in one litter. That's not the case here. The daintiness of these mountain cats is such that it will generally be 2 or 3 kittens. And then we have another group that are about 2.5 months old, and they're about that big without the tail. And then I have another black cat who's almost mature. He's about 8 months old now. He's the only survivor of one litter, and they don't all survive. We had a litter recently that didn't survive, and this is a curious thing to observe as well. And my wife gets very angry with the mother cat if that mother cat allows the kittens to perish. She gets very upset with them, and in some instances wants to kill the cat. Considers it a useless animal. It's broken its natural order, and it needs to be poisoned or killed. Farm people are pretty severe. My wife is a farm person and a mountain farm person. Remember, she didn't even have electricity until 2014. Most of her life was spent with animal fat candles, pig lard candles, talking with her brothers and sisters in a cabin when she was a child. It's kind of a magical upbringing, actually. It created a tightness in the family that I've never seen in any other family. And I said to my wife, I said, do you not think that maybe the cats know something that we don't? And my wife said, what do you mean? That there are too many mouths here, and another 3 kittens are not good, so for the betterment of the whole, she abandoned her kittens and allowed them to die. And my wife thought at first that was shocking. But upon contemplating it, she came to the conclusion that it very might be true. And it's always a little bit sad when the kittens die, you know. You got to get the spade out and dig a little hole, and we bury them like you bury anything. We're a little bit sentimental about these cats. Cigars are gone. I smoked 100 cigars in 15 days. It's about 7 a day. Absolutely no discipline, but I knew that I'm not going to re-up. I'm not going to start buying cigars in Costa Rica again. It was a nice 2 weeks of cigar smoking. And in fact, I didn't even return with 100. I probably smoked 15 or 20 before I even left Panama. So that's the story of the cats. But what I will tell you is when the cats are deemed by environmental regulation worthy of living, the mother cat and the entire cat colony will defend the kittens to the death. To the death. I've seen my cats go after the pit bulls if the pit bulls get a little bit too curious with the sniffing with a new litter. And then the other cats come in and they act as... if you've never seen anything like this, you're really missing out. To see cats behave as a colony and a group and a pack. You know, a pride of lions, a pride of cats is what I have. And they will back down an 80-pound pit bull. They easily back them down and make them cry and run away. in defense of their kittens. I've seen on one or two occasions where a stray dog has wandered onto the property, and they have to come onto our property. And the animals have a very distinct understanding of what is our property and what is our space. If the cats have kittens and there's a dog over at the church, which is only about 30 meters from my house, they will not become defensive. But there's a kind of a bush line in front of the house. My wife planted these greenery, this shrub, about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's grown into the most magnificent shrub wall you've ever seen. And if a dog comes through the driveway and passes that shrub line, all of the cats just go mental. I've seen my cats and my pit bulls fight together against one or two stray dogs who've come onto my property to expel them. You never seen anything like this in your life. A cat and a dog, a pit bull and a jungle cat fighting together. And I mean together. They work like a wrestling team. The dog terrifies the other, my dog terrifies the other dog, and while the dog is distracted, the cat's trying to scratch its eyes out. I've never seen anything like it in my life. The point of all this storytelling is to let you know that everything in creation considers tomorrow. Everything in creation considers what comes after it. Everything in creation considers the continuity of its genetics, its bloodline. Everything. Cats, dogs, everything now except maybe human beings. And this has become an extremely curious thing to me. Now, I don't want to speculate what happened to Charlie Kirk. Who knows? A lot of the theories out there are sound. Could Israel have been involved, or American assassins with access to mind-controlled people, satanic patsies? And the satanic culture in the United States is probably about 10 million people. And I mean hardcore, multi-generational, baby-sacrificing Satanists. Okay? And they draw from this culture. They draw from this religion. And this religion comes in very handy when very dark things have to be done. Could it have been an American group of people who put together this? You know? Some people are suggesting Israel was behind it. Some people suggest virulent American Zionists were behind it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not Columbo. I'm not a detective. I don't care to try to tap into some psychic power to figure out what happened. It's useless. It happened. It's done. What's of interest to me is the way the story was framed, whether it's real or not real. The killer is 22 years old. A man within the framework of his generation. I don't know what you'd call Charlie Kirk at 31. Is that a young millennial or an old Gen Z? And Charlie, he was trying to preach a kind of value and mindset to the young people that would allow them to have a future independent of the economic mess that the baby boomers and Gen X had left to the generations after them. And you have to ask yourself, why is this next generation coming up so angry? Why is tomorrow so dark? Why are so many of them celebrating and having parties when they get abortions? Why are they mutilating their bodies? Why, in an already overtaxed system, are they demanding that health services provide free sex changes, which I suspect in the American medical system, all in, the drugs, the therapy, the operations, all in, it's probably $250,000 to do a sex change on somebody. You have these aging baby boomers who need hip replacements and various other things that they've paid years and decades of medical insurance for. And our medical system focuses on gender issues related to largely Gen Z. Now, I find that amazing. I find it amazing that nobody puts things in the context I just gave you and gives you examples like the one I just gave you. And I'll tell you why they don't do it. They don't do it because they don't see it, because it's subtle. But when you tune into it, it's a fuck you through a megaphone. Okay? And it's coming from the Democratic side because the Republicans don't want to fund this nonsense. The Democrats were so committed to this ideal of transgenderism that they were talking about introducing it to the prison population. $250,000 worth of medical services to change your gender while incarcerated. Because, hey man, our gender theory is so accurate that you're probably in prison because you're the wrong gender and the confusion of that made you a criminal. And people buy this shit. And my question is, what happened to critical thinking? Why is there nobody in the university systems pushing back on this? Is it another example of shut your mouth or lose your job and your pension? We have Jordan Peterson, and he was a fine voice for a while. Then the Zionists got him. All the bright goy get gobbled up by the Zionist agenda because they have the deepest pockets. Jordan Peterson is a multi-millionaire now. Charlie Kirk was also on that same road, the same road as Jordan Peterson. They're bookends, really. Jordan Peterson is the rebellious baby boomer, in many ways chastising his own generation for its lack of voice and integrity in addressing tomorrow, which is ostensibly the topic and title of tonight's podcast. And I do think Jordan Peterson is concerned with tomorrow. And he stood up and he took a chance, and eventually he went through all kinds of trials. Now, I don't really care what you think of Jordan Peterson. I'm not a huge fan. Okay? I'm a fan of his story, and I don't think it's contrived. At least it's not contrived until he ends up in the fishing nets of the Zionists. But before that happened, which I would demarcate as the interview he did with Bibi Netanyahu, he was a fine and brave person as far as I'm concerned. And he's the baby boomer expression of that. And then you get this other incredibly intelligent and articulate Gentile in Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, starting his political and public voice journey at 18 and becoming the president of Turning Point USA in his early 20s. Highly funded by Zionist organizations, despite the fact that Charlie Kirk is a Christian. And Jordan Peterson, I think, is a Christian as well, although he doesn't like to answer that question directly. Now, I find this curious because part of the mandate of the Zionists is to destroy the Christians. Okay? It's clearly a stated mandate of the Zionists and the Jews in general to destroy the Christians. The Jews don't want to go into the age of Aquarius with any Gentiles. They want to rig it so that they're the only people on the planet. But if we're all the descendants of Noah's sons and daughters, I guess, daughters-in-law or sons-in-law, because they all got on the boat with their husbands and wives, I mean, if we're all descended from them, are we not all Jews? It doesn't make any sense when you think about it. So the Chinese are Jews. If Noah was a Jew, and his children were Jews, and their husbands and wives were Jews, how could there be anything but Jews on the planet? Doesn't make any sense, does it? The more you start to think about these things. Tomorrow is a very big theme in religious texts as well. Now, those of you who are Christians, I want to ask you some tough questions, and you can try to answer them in the comments if you want. If prophecy is real, how come computers, cell phones, the internet, and the nuclear bomb are not referenced in the Bible? How come they're not referenced in the book of Revelation, which is supposed to be a prophecy of this time? Oh, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, they are, Bruce. The world is supposed to be destroyed by fire. The Bible does not make that clear. That could be a solar flare. That could be the breaking down of our atmosphere, like the ozone layer, which apparently started to have holes in it in the 70s. But that is definitely a solar event. Or in another sense, it could perhaps be a molten event, a volcanic event. But nowhere in the Bible does it say fire made by man in a portion or proportion unimagined until its invention. Why would the Bible not reference the splitting of the atom, which is the foundation of reality? Now I realize when you're getting something visually as a prophet, and you would get it visually, a series of pictures. This is what a prophecy is. In the Old Testament, they constantly refer to the dreams of the prophets. It is well known in the Jewish scriptures that the prophets generally get spoken to in dreams. Dreams are a pictographic language, almost cinematic, with telepathy. Nobody really talks in dreams. When you're dreaming consciously enough, you'll realize nobody's really talking in a dream. It's all, the language is all just sort of hanging there like a kind of telepathy. And why would God not be able to give some conveyance of the future to come to these prophets? Something like the building block of reality will be cleaved. Something like that. Such and such will be split in half. Why is the fire to come and destroy us not referenced as fire made by man? And I think equally importantly, why is the mass communication of the internet overlooked? Why would a prophet not be able to see that? Is it just that the context wasn't there? I don't know. But I think given the reality we live in, you should have huge questions about the Bible and its authenticity as an instrument of prophecy and the voice of God. In fact, you should have little or no doubt that it is not the voice of the Creator. That much is true. I can almost assure you that. Okay? It is an inspirational book about consciousness, mainly centered in the astral, and referencing what I would consider to be an astral god, or the ruler of the astral plane, and more specifically, the ruler of Earth as it pertains to Earth on the astral. You see, this cosmology, when you get out into it, is as bureaucratic and layered as the Chinese Forbidden City in 1842. Layers and layers and layers of potentates and officials, and governors, gods, demigods, demiurges, demons, angels, visiting life forms from other regions of the universe, given permission to come and surveil us. It is a vast cosmological bureaucracy out there. And in all of this, nobody could think to articulate that the world being destroyed by fire would be the product of nuclear weapons. At the beginning of this podcast, I had a recording of myself reading Robert Phoenix's favorite poem, Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens. Don't ask me a single fucking question about that poem unless you find it on the internet and read along and listen to my reading of it 5 to 10 times. If you have a question after listening to it and following along on the page on your computer screen, if you have a question after doing that 10 times, send me the question in the comments. But do your work, because it's all there. Just listen to it. Just listen to it. What does the title mean? You think Jordan Maxwell is the beginning of questioning the legitimacy of the Abrahamic religions? And the sacrifice of Christ and all of this nonsense we live within as a system of mind control? And God help us if Charlie Kirk's death produces Christian fascism, what we could call the Christian Reich, the Third Reich, the Christian Reich. That might be a tool that could temporarily abet the destruction of Western Europe. And if that happens, I don't know if I'd be against it. But I don't know if I'd want to live in a Christian Reich any more than I'd want to live in an Islamic caliphate. The point is, we've reached the stage in our journey and our evolution and the numbers of generations we've had to be able to come to spiritual lucidity where we don't have to rest on the crutches of Scripture, that we can trust our inner relationship with the divine, we can trust that we can know that the causal force exists, and that is caution enough for us to not behave in a deleterious way towards our fellow humans and the other mammals and all life that we share on this planet. It's so beautiful, Sunday Morning. It is also one of my favorite poems. I prefer The Snowman, which is part of Wallace Stevens' oeuvre. I also prefer Another Weeping Woman. He was very powerful in these short poems. You know, Another weeping woman goes, pour the unhappiness out of your too bitter heart, which grieving will not sweeten. A poison grows in this dark. Its black blooms rise. Imagination, the one reality in this imagined world, leaves you with him for whom no fantasy moves, and you are pierced by a death. And it captures the state of heart and mind of a woman at a funeral who just lost somebody, a husband or a son. That's why they call him a poet's poet, If you're in this world at all, he was the Michael Jordan of poetry. He was the Wayne Gretzky of poetry. He was the Pele of poetry. He was the Muhammad Ali of poetry. You know those people who become so big in their field that even people who aren't necessarily interested in what they do stop and look because they know something almost supernatural is happening? That's Wallace Stevens. Okay? And he did it quietly. If you watch that documentary about him, never went to reject it all. Very similar to Cormac McCarthy. He did his work, he published it, and he rejected almost all accolades and all titles offered to him. He rejected a prestigious position in the English department at Harvard University. And he just stayed on as vice president of the insurance company in Hartford, Connecticut, where he was a lawyer and wrote poetry on the side. I like these people because they echo my own philosophy and sentiment, which is to make an honest living. And then if you have anything more to offer people, do it as an offering. Don't do it transactionally. Now, that doesn't mean I don't appreciate the paid subscribers. I do. Thank you very much. Every dollar counts. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do this no matter what. It's like busking. Some people throw $1 in the basket. Some people just hear the music, enjoy it for 30 seconds, and keep walking. I don't think it really matters that much to the busker it does. They probably make their living at that. I myself make an honest living. An honest is a day's work. I have a trade. I have an art, which is creative writing. And then I have this hobby of podcasting. And I'd say podcasting is a hobby. And I believe we live in a time where every little bit counts. And that if you have something to say and it's meaningful, you should say it. If you think you can reach certain people that other people can't reach, then start speaking. Because now is a moment that matters. All of these moments before the great turbulence matter. Everybody who's moved another meter toward their own awakening matters. And if you can assist in that, do it. And the service will assist you in your further awakening. Service begets grace. It's an old religious and spiritual maxim. Being of service to others makes you more receptive to the grace of the energy above us. And that's an important thing. And once you come into that economy, the economy of grace, service comes quite naturally in whatever form is comfortable for you. Doesn't have to be a soup kitchen. People who do it with money aren't really serving. They're not really sacrificing anything. I'm talking about, the big billionaire donors. I don't want to discourage them from doing it. But I think 90% of the time they're doing it as marketing ploys. Jeff Cuban just donated $10 million to... Jeff Bezos just gave $50 million to... that's advertising. Right? I'm a good guy. You know who really is a good person? Jeff Bezos' first wife. She was given over $30 billion in the divorce, and she's given away, I think, over $8 billion already. Quietly, no fanfare, no publicity, nothing. True compassion, true caring, true service. God bless her. I think that's about enough for tonight. I think I am going to call this tomorrow. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.